So the process is good. And this is a chance to prove that in your current form, you have grown enough to actually play with the big boys. Actually, I'm not even going to make you wait. Zach Ertz and Jeremy Chinn are listed as questionable in this game. And that just came down a few minutes ago. We'll get into kind of the implications of that. But Zach Ertz was a limited participant yesterday in practice and today with a concussion and a shoulder. Obviously, the concussion's the big one. Can he clear the protocol? You can practice on a limited basis without clearing the protocol. It's actually part of the protocol. So there's a chance that Zach Ertz plays on Sunday, which is not something we were counting on this week. We are, at this point, I think, pretty certain that Jeremy Chinn is going to play because he was a full participant today, which I think in order to be a full participant, then you need to be able to actually clear the concussion protocol. So Jeremy Chinn looks like he is good to go. The other thing that unfortunately is kind of going out or going around the team right now is there's a sickness and illness, and you have to imagine that, I don't know who started it. Dan Quinn talked today in his press conference about they don't know who patient zero is. There's a lot of laughing and finger pointing, but the serious side of it is dudes have been sick all week. John Bates missed practice on Thursday. Sam Cosmi missed practice Wednesday and Thursday. Both of them were full participants today. So the sickness, illness, hopefully that is done. And, frankly, when you look at how the Commanders' offensive line room looked last week, if you told me that on top of Tyler Biadasz being sick and missing the game entirely, that if a couple other of them had something and didn't feel 100%, I would feel better about their performance. So there's certainly a chance that just based off health alone, Washington is in a much better situation this week up front, and we will see where things go on that front. Because, as mentioned, the stakes could not be higher. We always start the Friday show by asking what's at stake. And in a season where an adjustment to the expectations was made long ago, where, yes, we still have this big picture view where things in the long term are looking great, looking up. This is year one of the rebuild. Imagine what happens when they have all this great stuff happening, more experience for their young players, even more good players when guys want to come here in free agency. They get some more draft classes, and XYZ down the list. This season, they have been good enough to make the playoffs. They have been one of the top half teams in the league. 14, of course, make it. 7 from each conference now. So you have to be a little bit better than one of the best half teams in your conference. And the Commanders certainly have been. Outside of Philadelphia, Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay, I don't know how many teams really have been better than them. Obviously, Atlanta or Tampa will win the division. I think when healthy, Tampa's, not only because they beat Washington head-to-head in week 1, I think they've generally played better. But this Washington team is legit. And the one thing missing from their resume is a really impressive win over a top team. And they've beaten, with the exception of the Dallas game, they have beaten every team they're supposed to. Some have been blowouts. Some have been, obviously a lot closer than they should have been. See last week against New Orleans. But this is a chance to, I'm going to use a phrase that Anthony texted me earlier, and I cringed because he sent me a list of is this this game, that game? And it was like all the sports radio hot button ways you could describe a game. Is it a must-win game? Is it a statement game? Is it a code red game? But it actually is a chance for a statement game. In a way, every game is. You make a statement, and how much weight that carries probably depends on the opponent, the situation. But I think going into the playoffs, assuming they can win one of these final 3, if not 2, they win 2, they're guaranteed. They win 3, they're obviously guaranteed. They win 1, they're probably good enough. If they just take care of business now and they beat a Philadelphia team that has won 9 in a row, has the best defense in football, and an offense that found its passing game last week, then I think you make the case that, I know we've been struggling a little bit here and there, but we can compete with the big boys. Because down in, down out, I know we talk about this a lot, but down in, down out, this team is pretty good. The question is, can they make the big plays? And this is where the talent deficiency shows. A team like Philadelphia is also good down in, down out. They have A.J. Brown. They have Devontae Smith. They have Jalen Carter. They have Kenyon Mitchell. They have these dudes that just make insanely big plays, key interceptions, key sacks, knock down a ball, get a tackle for loss. Obviously, on the offensive side, touchdown. Oh, by the way, Saquon Barkley is good for at the end of the game, busting off a 60-yard run every other week. And on the off week, he's hitting a 40-yarder. Like, that's who they've been the entire year, which is how you dominate the way you dominate. You don't just play well. All right, we got 4 yards on that play that was kind of designed to get 4 yards. We got 5 yards on this run. We avoid penalties, and we have to drive the ball up and down the field, and we're running a ton of plays, living between the 20s, and then, some weeks we're really good in the red zone, other weeks, no, you hit the big explosive plays. When quarterbacks throw you the ball defensively, you catch the thing. And that is where the Commanders have fallen short of being a great team this year. But they are so close. Like, the opportunities are there. They are generating them. And that is in itself something worth not celebrating, but worth pointing out on how close it is, right? Because we saw last year, like, they weren't generating anything. There were no schematic things that were like, oh, a bunch of dropped interceptions. Joe Witt's clearly got some guys in position to make plays. Frankie Louvu needs to catch the football. Mike Sanders still had one last week. He could have had two. Chin, catch the ball. If they just catch it, scheme worked. You baited the quarterback into it. You generated the turnovers. And if they could just catch balls at a 20% higher rate, they'd be a top 10 team in turnovers in the NFL probably, which is where Quinn and Witt are used to being with the defenses that they've coordinated and coached on over the course of their careers. Offensively, just look at the Terry plays last week. They have one big play threat right now. Like, obviously, if B-Rob busts one like he did in the Tennessee game, cool. He's not like a typical 50-yard run type of back in terms of he's not a 4.3 speed type of guy. He's fast. Like, he's fine, but he's not explosive by NFL running back standards at an extreme degree. Diami's obviously fast, but, like, Terry's the guy. He was wide open 3 times last week in the fourth quarter alone, and Jaden missed him. You start hitting those like you did earlier in the season, and now all of a sudden you're talking about a top-flight football team. One more interception, 2 more big plays offensively, completely different outcomes. And so the process is good, and this is a chance to prove that in your current form, you have grown enough to actually play with the big boys. Playing with the big boys means you've got to make big boy plays or big-time plays. And Jaden Daniels, by the way, is the guy who's been their big-time player this year. He's generated a ton of stuff, but his rate of doing so has fallen off, and specifically it is lower against 2 high shells, a.k.a. when there's 2 safeties playing deep, which makes sense on some level. Like, everyone would rather face 1 deep safety versus 2, but compared to kind of how efficient he's been, his big playability drops off in those situations more than other quarterbacks. I think I was listening to Athletic Football Show earlier. Derek Klassen had the stat, or it might have been Mays had the stat, one of them, that he's like 5th in success rate when he's facing 2 high shells, and he's 9th in EPA per play, which just tells you you're not pushing the ball down the field as much. Are you getting the little underneath stuff? Yes. Are you getting the stuff down the field? No. And so can he find those plays that he was able to find against the Saints? He had the deep corner to Terry, and he obviously missed a couple of others that could have been big. You find those, you got a chance. And then all of a sudden, the way people are looking at you in the media and on the observers on the outside, how opponents look at you, but maybe more importantly, how you look at yourself changes, because finally we did it. We can compete with a team like this. So it is a chance to make a statement. I'll use the silly term, Anthony, a statement game, but it's a chance this weekend to prove that you're not just a playoff team because you're kind of a little bit better than the teams that are terrible, but that you are actually dangerous going into January.